We've moved the header, navigation menu and footer in this site to server-side includes, and everything works well in Pages at the top level of the site. If I go to the Arrangements page, click this link in the navigation menu, it takes me to the correct page. It's at the top level of the site. So is Build a Bouquet and Our Designers. They all work. The problems arise when you go into a subfolder. So let's select Care Tips and Caring for Orchids. The logo is missing from the header there. It's also missing down here from the footer. Both of them come from server-side includes. Now the problem gets even worse when you try to follow a link. Let's click Arrangements, 404, Page Not Found. To discover why this is happening, let's go back and view the page source. And I'll just zoom in so we can see what's happening. The problem is best illustrated by comparing lines 6 and line 13, the links to the images. On line 6, the href begins with ... In other words, it's going up a level before it tries to find the images folder, whereas the source attribute on line 13 goes directly to the images folder. It's trying to find the images folder inside the current folder. It's not there, so the logo doesn't appear. And what's happened is that the site was created using links relative to the current document. And when PHP includes the external files, they become an integral part of the web page. And links relative to the current document in an include file stop working in subfolders. But although document relative links won't work, links relative to the site root will work. Now you might think that there's a contradiction there with what was discussed earlier about not using links relative to the site root with PHP includes. The include and require commands themselves don't understand links relative to the site root, but that doesn't stop you from using such links inside an include file. In fact, you must. So let's go to the editor and try sorting this out. A link relative to the site root begins with a /, and what you've got to do is to convert all of the links inside your server-side includes into site root relative links. In other words, beginning with a / and including the full path to wherever you want to go. So with index.php, that's at the top level. It needs a / there, and the images folder is also at the top level, so a / in front of that. And then you need to go through all of the other links in your server-side includes. Now this will work fine if you're using a virtual host or the top level of your remote server. However, if your testing server is in a subfolder of the web servers root folder, you need to adopt a slightly different approach. And I'm working in a subfolder of htdocs on Apache, so the site root is localhost, not Hansel and Petal. So one thing I could do is add Hansel and Petal to every link. So I could make this / Hansel and Petal / and then that would work. The problem is that when I want to upload this to my remote server, I'm then going to have to go through all of my server-side includes to remove that. So obviously that solution doesn't really work. So let's get rid of Hansel and Petal there. And the solution, if you haven't already guessed, is to use a variable. So let's create a variable, put it in a PHP block at the top of the server-side include. And I'm going to call the variable site root. And I'll call it Hansel and Petal. And of course it must begin with a /. So now that I've got a variable for the site root, all I need to do is to put that variable at the beginning of each of my site root relative links in the server-side includes. So what I'm going to do here is to insert a PHP block and echo that variable site root. So a PHP block, echo site root. Make sure there's no space between the opening PHP tag and this quotation mark here, and no space between the closing PHP tag and this /, because if you put any spaces in there, the path will be incorrect. And you need to do this with every link within the page, so it's very easy just to copy and paste. So if I copy that and then just paste that in there, and then carry on throughout the rest of the page. I won't waste your time doing every link in the page. You can do that yourself. The other important thing to realize is that when you upload to your remote site, all you need to do is to change this to an empty string. In other words, just delete that Hansel and Petal. So it's like that. And then your pages will work perfectly on your remote server. But let's put that Hansel and Petal back in. And that's how we will use it in our testing server. Now, just to recap, it might seem something of a contradiction, but when including a file, the include command uses a path relative to the current document. However, inside an include file, paths need to be relative to the site root. If your testing folder is in a subfolder of the site root, use a variable to point to that folder during development, and change the value of the variable to an empty string when you finally deploy the site on the internet.